I'm in a hotel, the hotel which the government has obliged foreign journalists to stay in ever since this crisis began. My movements are still being controlled. I'm not allowed to go out of that hotel. Now, there was a lot of fighting in the vicinity of this hotel up until about an hour or so ago. That's now calmed down. Just looking out of the window, you can see fireworks in the distance, which you would assume could be fireworks of celebration. But the streets directly outside this hotel, a little 5 miles or so to the south of the city centre, the streets are absolutely deserted at the moment. No on them, and certainly no jubilant crowds on them.
So all this talk earlier on from the government that they were going to fight to the end, there doesn't seem to be much sign of that, just at the moment anyway.
At the moment, there doesn't. There are these rumours that Colonel Gaddafi's personal bodyguards have laid down their weapons. There are other rumours about his son, Saif al-Islam, having been arrested. There are all sorts of rumours swirling around that the rebels are on the march into Tripoli itself, and they are, as yet, not being met with any sort of force. Now, you know, it's very hard to read this from where I am. However, it is worth noting that on some occasions in the past, when the opposition forces have moved into key towns, they have then found themselves, to a certain extent, surrounded by pro-Gaddafi forces who emerge from rooftops as snipers, who then start firing in mortars and other heavy weaponry onto the rebels. Perhaps that is a tactic that is going to be employed here in Tripoli tonight. Alternatively, if the quietness and the speed of the rebel advance, as appears to be at the moment, if that is maintained, then perhaps we really are witnessing the fall of the regime, and possibly even a fairly peaceful one.
Matthew Price there in Tripoli, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's go now to Orla Guerin, who's in Misrata, where the rebels are more or less based, or many of them anyway. Well, Orla, how do you read the situation from there?
Well, I think even a week ago, very few people would have thought that things could move at this speed. And yet tonight we have the rebels in the heart of Tripoli. Now, this was supposed to be Colonel Gaddafi's last bastion, and from what we're hearing, they have managed to stream in almost with relative ease. And I think the big question tonight is, where is Colonel Gaddafi? And particularly, where will he be by morning? Now, here in Misrata, as you can probably hear, celebrations have erupted. It started more than an hour ago. You might be able to see in the street behind me that we have cars coursing up and down, blaring their horns. We have drivers shouting victory slogans. We have celebratory gunfire going on more or less all the time. We've had fireworks in the sky. Now, these celebrations may be a little bit premature, but I suppose people here would be forgiven. This city suffered enormously under Colonel Gaddafi. There was heavy shelling here earlier in the year. I was here at that time when you simply couldn't move around on the streets. There were snipers terrorizing the population. And here in this city alone, more than 400 civilians were killed. So down on the streets tonight, they're very anxious to begin the celebrations. Now, back earlier in the year, I covered the rebel advances for about a month, and at that stage, they were woefully lacking in strategy and in discipline, but they certainly seem to have learned from their mistakes. And what we saw in the last few weeks particularly was a strategic, coordinated advance with the aim of cutting off supply routes, encircling Colonel Gaddafi, and it certainly seems to have worked. And I think if the rebels are on the verge of victory, or if victory is coming soon, it's because they have worked hand in glove with NATO, though NATO may not be willing to share that credit. But tonight the feeling here is very much that even though it could still be a long night in Tripoli, there could still be dangers ahead. But people here are hoping that they will wake up after 42 years to a Libya that could look very, very different.
Orla Guerin in Misrata, many thanks. On to other news now. The RAF has grounded the Hawk aircraft flown by the Red Arrows while an investigation is carried out into the deaths of one of its pilots during a display. Flight Lieutenant John Egging crashed at the Bournemouth Air Show yesterday. His wife said today he was an amazing and dedicated husband. Danny Savage reports.
At the scene of the Red Arrows crash near Bournemouth, investigations continue. The pilot who died here was 33-year-old Afghanistan veteran John Egging. Tonight, his widow Emma paid tribute to him.
John was an amazing person. He was a completely dedicated husband and friend, and he was just there for everybody. And he always gave his absolute most, whether it was for his job or for his home life. So John was just brilliant.
But why did Flight Lieutenant Egging's plane fail to complete this well-practiced manoeuvre and crash? One experienced fast jet pilot suggests several possibilities.
Everything from aircraft mechanical failure, fuel starvation, that sort of thing, bird strikes perhaps, pilot's incapacitation, distraction, a whole host of things. There's a list, anything you can think of really at the outset is what they'll be looking at.
The Hawk jets flown by the Red Arrows and used by the rest of the RAF have all been grounded as part of the inquiry. In their 46-year history, the Red Arrows have performed more than 4,000 displays in over 50 countries. For the last 20 years, they've used the Hawk T1. The team have only ever had one other fatal accident with this type of aircraft. But last year, the entire Hawk fleet was grounded over problems with the ejector seat. At the Bournemouth Airshow this afternoon, there was a minute's silence and many wore red clothes as a tribute to John Egging.
And it's not just people in Bournemouth who've been paying their respects. Here at the home of the Red Arrows, others have been signing a book of condolence and leaving flowers, illustrating the real bond here between the community and the people who fly those distinctive red and white jets.
Jets which are seen practising in the skies north of Lincoln for much of the year. But the thoughts of this community are with the wife and family of Flight Lieutenant Egging. One person here today wrote, "You gave so much pleasure to so many. One of the few." Danny Savage, BBC News, Lincolnshire.
A memorial concert for the 77 people killed by a right-wing extremist has been held in Oslo today. Families of the victims and survivors attended the service along with Norway's royal family and leading politicians. King Harald fought back tears during an emotional speech. I think we can have a report now from our correspondent in Oslo, Steve Rosenberg.
This was Norway's answer to Anders Breivik's terror, a ceremony of song and remembrance. In the audience, here in the hall where the Nobel Peace Prize is awarded, were the family members of Breivik's victims and those Norwegians who'd survived the attacks.
Som landets konge,
King Harald of Norway declared that freedom was stronger than fear. Earlier, politicians and foreign dignitaries had laid flowers outside Oslo Cathedral. With today's ceremony here in Oslo, Norway brings to an end what has been a month of mourning. The hope now is that a nation traumatised by two acts of terror can start to move on. In jail, Anders Breivik is to be kept in total isolation for 4 more weeks. He's confessed to the car bomb that killed 8 people in Oslo. He admits shooting 69 people on Utøya Island, but he doesn't see it as a crime. Those who'd fled the island a month ago went back to honour the dead and to try to come to terms with what happened here. Adrian Prakon was shot by Breivik.
This will be an enormous help for me in the future as well, to know that I've been here again. I've returned with a smile on my face and a tear in my eye, but I do feel that this was very, very good for me, and I also heard that it was very good for many others as well.
Jorrit Nordmellen was on the island too that day. When she heard gunshots, she hid from Breivik under a bed.
We've cried so many tears. I don't have any tears left, and I don't want to cry anymore either, because tomorrow we have to start living our lives again, and I think this will be great closure for us.
Tarald, Kuven, Mjelde.
But at the end of the memorial service, there were tears as the victims' names were read out. 77 people killed by one man. Norway will try now to move on, but what Breivik did has left deep scars. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Oslo.
Now the cricket. It promises to be an exciting final day in the Test series tomorrow. England bowled India out and forced them to follow on today. And at the close, the tourists were 129 for 3 in their second innings. That's still 162 runs behind. Patrick Gearey reports.
England preparing for a day of bowling in fitting fashion, as India's batting foundations have been built on sand this series. At least they had their rock. Rahul Dravid has been the only man who's come close to being reliable for the tourists. At the other end, the crumble went on. MS Dhoni gone and India in another fine mess. Dravid was playing the straight man though, moving to his third century of the series, while his teammates had yet to get one between them. He inspired Amit Mishra to take some initiative, and the pair of them were making things challenging for England. But once again, they reacted. Specifically, Ian Bell reacted. Mishra gone. When you're playing well, these just stick. Gautam Gambhir stuck around for a while before Stuart Broad accounted for him. India got to 300, but no further. Dravid remained unbeaten, but he got no time for a rest. England asked him and his team to follow on, so out he came again. This time, though, his resistance was ended by Graham Swan. Perhaps even the umpire couldn't believe it was true, as it needed a review to finally send him on his way. India needed someone similarly stubborn. Virender Sehwag wasn't it. Neither was VVS Laxman. As the sun starts to set on a glorious summer for English Test cricket, tomorrow could be a golden finale. Patrick Gearey, BBC News.
Reminder of the main news tonight. Libyan rebels have advanced into the heart of the capital, Tripoli. A few minutes ago, Downing Street issues a statement saying it was clear the end is near for Gaddafi and urged him to go now. You can follow all the latest developments in Libya on the BBC News Channel. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. From me, good night.